My cousin's son, Danny, was a menace. After learning I'd opened a handbag store, every time he visited, he'd secretly take a knife and slash my bags. Within a year of opening, he'd ruined 4 of them, causing over 10,000 yuan in damages. Furious, I reported it to the police, but my cousin and his wife dismissed it, saying, "Kids don't know any better," and offered some random items as paltry compensation. This time, without me watching him, Danny went on a rampage, slashing 7 or 8 designer bags. When my cousin and his wife found out, they weren't concerned in the least, even praising their son for his strength. I just smiled, realizing I'd forgotten to tell them that I had already sold the store 2 weeks prior. At my brother's son's full-month celebration, the party was about to begin, but my cousin's family was nowhere to be seen. My father made several calls before my cousin finally answered, his voice immediately laced with irritation. "What's the rush? Besides, who remembers which hotel you booked? We can't find it. Send someone to pick us up." Despite my annoyance, I was assigned the task of fetching them. Coincidentally, the pickup location was near my old handbag store. Arriving there, I witnessed Danny stealthily slashing bags inside a shop. A cold sweat broke out. This wasn't my small boutique anymore, this was a high-end designer handbag store. The moment he saw me, Danny dashed out, hands on his hips, making a grotesque face, and spat at me. "You disgusting woman, who told you to snitch last time? I'll slash all the bags in your house." I was torn between anger and immense relief. I had recently sold this store too. It had nothing to do with me anymore. Before, Danny had enjoyed slashing bags in my store without punishment, so this time he was even more brazen. A single designer bag cost at least tens of thousands of yuan. "Mommy, Daddy," he shrieked, running into the adjacent jewelry store with an aggressive swagger. I followed him in, finding my cousin and his wife browsing gold necklaces. My father texted again, asking about the situation. The party was starting soon, and it wouldn't look good to begin without them, given their volatile tempers and penchant for making trouble. But waiting indefinitely wasn't an option either, as many other relatives were present. My cousin's wife, seeing me checking my phone, smirked. "Lynn, what's wrong? Seeing how well your store is doing? Why don't you buy yourself a necklace?" I immediately declined. "No need. Are you done shopping? Let's go to the party. Everyone's waiting." I was still debating whether to tell them about Danny slashing bags. To my surprise, my cousin's wife scoffed. "Thought becoming a boss would make you rich? Turns out you're still stingy. You don't have a single decent piece of jewelry on you. Even my Mia has a gold necklace." I suppressed my rage, forgetting all about mentioning Danny's latest vandalism, and simply urged them to hurry to the party. "If you delay any longer, I'll go ahead." My cousin was unconcerned. "What's the rush? It's just a full-month celebration for a poor family's child, nothing grand. It's a huge favor that we even bothered to come. Just tell them to postpone the start time." Danny, seeing me being treated this way, rolled his eyes, then kicked me squarely. "Get lost. Don't stand here upsetting my mom. Mom said looking at you poor relatives makes her sick." I was seething, ready to teach him a lesson. But my cousin's wife immediately shielded him, showering him with praise. "Oh, my son is so clever, kicking people so hard. When we get home, Mommy will give you extra supplements so you can grow up to be even stronger." My cousin looked at me with cold indifference. "It's just kids playing around with you. Why the long face? Hurry up and take us to the party. I still want to ask your eldest uncle why he sent someone to pick us up with such an attitude." I was so angry I nearly laughed. I turned my back and walked away, not caring if they followed. As I reached the adjacent store, I saw a staff member holding a slashed bag, running frantically towards the counter to alert her colleagues. It seemed they had discovered the damage. They would surely check the CCTV. I wanted to see if my cousin and his wife could evade compensation this time. The bag in the employee's hand alone was worth over 200,000 yuan, and Danny had damaged more than one. The store, originally, was a joint venture between me and my wealthy friend, a young lady from a rich family who started it after graduation. She was primarily responsible for the investment, while I handled management. My family was of average means, but she had no shortage of money and was very generous, so most of the store's operations were left to me. Initially, business was quite good. Though not booming, I still earned more than I would have working for someone else. That was until my cousin brought his son, Danny, to the store. They bought nothing, only pointed and sneered with disdain. My cousin's wife even deliberately spoke in a sarcastic tone. "I see you haven't made much money running this store. What kind of shoddy business is this? Why don't you come work for our family's store? We're relatives. I can even give you a 500 yuan raise. What can a girl like you achieve in business? Don't end up losing all your parents' savings and having to borrow from us. My cousin's family used to be poorer than ours, often coming to our house to beg for help. Then, by some stroke of luck, they won 1 million yuan in the lottery. Their lives improved dramatically, and they opened a hot pot restaurant. From then on, their entire family became arrogant and conceited, looking down on poorer relatives like us. Despite my cousin's wife's blatant and thinly veiled mockery, I didn't argue. But after they left, I discovered a slashed bag in the store. Reviewing the CCTV, I quickly saw Danny, with a small blade, secretly cutting the bag while his parents talked to me. That bag was worth several hundred yuan. I refused to accept such an unreasonable loss, especially since the store wasn't solely mine. So, I called them repeatedly to explain the situation, but not only did they deny it, their attitude grew increasingly hostile. Finally, I had no choice but to go to their house. I gently asked Danny why he'd damaged the bag in my store. My cousin and his wife immediately pulled him towards them, looking heartbroken. My cousin looked at me coldly. "What right do you have to do anything? Even a child can cause trouble. It's true, I look down on you poor relatives for a reason." I genuinely didn't understand why I was being accused of causing trouble with a child, but they didn't give me a chance to explain. My cousin's wife looked utterly annoyed. "Even if my son did slash your shoddy bag, what's the big deal? It's normal for a small child to be playful. Our family spends tens of thousands of yuan in 2 or 3 days." Danny, seeing he wasn't being punished and even sensing his parents' disdain for me, became even more unruly. He broke free from his parents and ran straight at me, kicking me. He was small and didn't know how to exert much force, but the kick landed directly on my stomach, making me gasp in pain. I immediately grabbed him tightly. I couldn't actually hit him, but I glared fiercely, demanding, "Apologize right now." The boy was finally frightened by me, but my cousin and his wife immediately rushed over, pulled my hands off him, and embraced their son. "Stop it. You're so old, yet you're bickering with a child, demanding an apology? Aren't you ashamed?" Danny was cunning. He immediately grabbed the bag of fruit I had brought and threw it out the door, then arrogantly yelled, "Get out of my house. My parents said poor people like you smell bad and told me to stay away." I had endured enough of their family's sarcasm. If it weren't for the matter at hand, I would never have wanted to come here. They damaged my bag but refused to compensate me, yet they still openly mocked me. I didn't want to stay for another minute, but I also refused to leave without compensation. So I was determined not to leave until I got my money. After some back and forth, my cousin and his wife grudgingly offered compensation with household items. They thrust an ashtray into my hand and immediately shoved me out the door. They claimed it was a branded item they bought for 5,000 yuan, and selling it secondhand would surely cover my bag. But when I tried to sell it, I discovered it was a fake, not worth a penny. When I went back to confront them, I found their entire family had vanished. To avoid paying for a bag worth a few hundred yuan, they had even bought plane tickets and flown abroad for a vacation. I had no other choice, seething with anger and indignation. I had to pay for the damages out of my own pocket. From then on, I was always wary whenever they visited my store. But despite my precautions, Danny still managed to sneakily damage bags twice more. He even learned to differentiate between brands, choosing expensive bags worth thousands of yuan each time. After a year of business, he had ruined 4 bags, causing over 10,000 yuan in damages. I reported it to the police, but nothing ever came of it. Reaching my breaking point, I discussed it with my wealthy friend, and we decided to sell the store. The new owner then upgraded it into a luxury handbag boutique. At the time, I just wondered if Danny would still dare to slash bags. To my surprise, he didn't disappoint. My cousin and his wife drove slowly behind me to the party venue. My father and brother greeted them with smiles, then announced to the servers to begin bringing out the dishes. My cousin and his wife imperiously sat at the main table, their faces sour, clearly displeased with the hotel my brother had chosen, which annoyed me. However, when the food was served, they immediately spun the lazy Susan towards themselves, taking food without letting others touch it. Other relatives began to look uncomfortable, and Danny was even more brazen. He used his hands to grab food, making a mess of the table. An elder, displeased, spoke up, "The Chu family, there are many others at the table. Please watch your child." To my astonishment, my cousin's wife not only didn't stop him but laughed. "Oh, my son loves to eat and he's growing. Why do you all care so much?" The other relatives were speechless, exchanging awkward glances. Some quietly whispered, "They really have no manners." Danny, far from being scared, shouted, "My dad said that at the dining table, those with money eat first, and the poor ones have to wait until we finish before touching their chopsticks. Don't you dare fight for food with me." The moment he finished, everyone's expressions immediately turned grim. I chuckled coldly, speaking sarcastically. My, your family is truly rich, cousin. It's only natural that your child is raised this way. But a child this ill-mannered might end up involved in crimes and being chased by the police when he grows up, wouldn't he?" My cousin and his wife immediately blew up. His wife slammed her chopsticks on the table, yelling, "Lin Chu, shut your stinking mouth. What do you mean, raising him? My family has money. We don't need poor, ragged people like you to talk so much. You'd better treat my son well. Later, when he's successful and makes a lot of money, you'll be lining up to curry favor with us." My cousin chimed in, "Exactly. My family isn't like you lot. We don't need anyone to lecture us. If you want to preach morality, first earn some money. If I were as poor as you, I wouldn't even have the appetite to eat, let alone fight over a few scraps of food." The atmosphere instantly became tense. Everyone at the table looked clearly angry, turning their gaze to my father and brother. Out of respect for the hosts, no one dared to react strongly. Just then, my father and brother approached with wine glasses to toast the relatives. They had also heard the sarcastic remarks from my cousin and his wife. Though angry, they tried to maintain peace. My father raised his glass, politely saying, "Today is my grandson's full-month celebration. Thank you all for coming to share our joy. This glass is for all of you." Everyone congratulated them in turn. Those who drank raised their glasses, and those who didn't used soft drinks as a substitute. Only my cousin and his wife didn't even bat an eyelid. Even after my father and brother had finished drinking, my cousin extended his empty glass, nonchalantly saying, "Nephew, if you pour me some wine, I'll do you the favor of drinking a sip." My father was a bit awkward but managed to stay calm, picking up the wine bottle and pouring for my cousin. To my surprise, Danny mimicked him, raising his glass high and boastfully saying, "Old man, pour me some too." His mother beamed, praising him. "My son truly has charisma. He's sure to be even more capable than us later." I was trembling with rage, a fire erupting in my chest. They were utterly despicable in their contempt. I snatched the glass from Danny's hand and smashed it violently to the ground, then splashed the contents of my cousin's wine glass directly onto him. My cousin immediately exploded, shouting, "Lin Chu, what are you doing?" I held nothing back, loudly retorting, "What do you asterisk want to do? If you truly think my family is poor, then don't come to this full-month celebration. You're already here, yet you have no manners, only know how to make others uncomfortable. Who do you think you are? If it weren't for your lucky lottery win, your entire family would still be racking your brains to make ends meet. What is there to be so proud of?" My voice boomed, instantly sending my cousin and his wife into a frenzy. The two sides began a loud argument. Hearing the commotion, everyone at the party crowded around our table. My father worriedly advised me to calm down and not get into a heated argument with them. Some relatives also spoke up, saying that my cousin's family was indeed too boastful. But there were also those who, seeing they had some money, deliberately flattered them, pretending nothing was wrong. Ultimately, it was my brother, with a stern face, who stepped in to stabilize the situation. The meal continued in a dismal atmosphere. Everyone had lost their appetite. Some relatives, annoyed by my cousin and his wife, ate a few perfunctory bites and then left. As for me, it goes without saying. Seeing my cousin's family made me nauseous. I had no appetite whatsoever. Just then, an employee from the handbag store called me. I guessed what had happened, so I put her on speakerphone. Her voice was full of worry. "Lynn, it's happened again. Your cousin's son has slashed bags in the store again. This time it's 4 or 5 bags, a huge loss. We've already called the police. What should we do now? If your family doesn't compensate this time, I might lose my job." I glanced at my cousin and his wife, who looked completely unconcerned. I immediately sent the store's location to the employee, telling her to bring the police directly here. This employee had been with the store since I was the owner. It had only been a few months since the new owner took over, and such a serious incident had occurred. She was undoubtedly panicked. My mother, who had been busy helping my brother with the baby since the beginning of the party, hadn't said a word, even as my cousin and his wife loudly caused trouble. But now, hearing about the slashed bags in the store, she finally couldn't hold back and angrily said, "This is truly an eye-opener. How can there be such shameless people in the world who don't know how to raise their children? If he's like this when he's little, who knows what kind of trouble he'll cause when he grows up?" My cousin's wife immediately jumped up, pointing a finger at my mother's face, snarling, "Who are you talking about? Stop with the veiled insinuations. If you dare say one more word about my son, I'll rip your mouth off." My mother was now trembling with rage, but holding the baby, it was inconvenient to argue. She tried to suppress her anger and not continue the fight. She only asked me, "How much is the loss this time? We didn't get a penny from your cousin's family the previous times." So, my mother didn't have much hope. I had sold the store but hadn't yet told my family. Before I could speak, my cousin eagerly interjected. "How much could it be? Lynn, honestly, you run a store as if you're dirt poor. What's the big deal if a nephew comes to play and slashes a few bags? You act like you're about to lose your life. It's just a bit of petty cash. Today is a happy day, and as your cousin, I don't want to be accused of bullying you. How about this? This time my son slashed the bags, I'll compensate you for everything." Agreed. I was so angry I laughed. Before, my bags were cheap. Though not a huge loss, you make it sound so easy, don't you? Every time you said it wasn't worth much, but have you ever actually compensated me? This time, I don't care if you compensate or not. I don't want anything to do with your family anymore. As soon as they heard me say I didn't want compensation, my cousin and his wife immediately feigned indifference. But my parents panicked. My mother hastily said, "Lynn, it's not easy to earn money. How can you just let it go? Child, if you're afraid of trouble, your father and I will handle it. You just need to calculate the exact loss." With that, she handed the baby to someone else, determined to seek justice for me. She glared at Danny, angrily saying, "Danny, how many times have I told you not to damage the bags in your aunt's store? Why don't you listen?" But the boy wasn't afraid of my mother at all. Instead, he defiantly shouted, "I won't listen. You damn old hag, if you look at me like that again, I'll gouge your eyes out right now." These venomous words came from the mouth of a child only 6 or 7 years old. Yet his parents showed no indignation, merely standing with their arms crossed, looking completely unconcerned. My father was so angry he couldn't say another word, simply pointing at my cousin and his wife and coldly stating, "This time, not a single cent will be short. You will compensate my daughter in full." Then he turned to me and asked, "Lynn, exactly how much is the damage?" I replied nonchalantly, "I'm not quite sure. I heard it's around 2 or 3 million yuan. The exact amount, we'll wait for the store staff to arrive and calculate." Hearing me, my parents froze. They knew the value of goods in the store. Even if all the bags were destroyed, it couldn't amount to 2 or 3 million yuan. Their eyes were full of suspicion, while my cousin and his wife burst into laughter. My cousin sneered mockingly, "I thought we were family, and this time I intended to help you with the compensation. I never expected you to be so greedy. 2 or 3 million yuan? Why don't you just say tens of millions? Or just go rob a bank, that's faster." It's true, there's a reason poor people are poor. His wife chimed in, pulling Danny close, pretending to praise him. "Son, tell mommy, how did you slash the bags? You're so clever and capable." The boy, hearing his mother's praise, immediately puffed out his chest, stood proudly on his chair, and arrogantly recounted, "Those stupid women were all blind. I just ran past quickly and it was done." My father's face immediately darkened, a hint of sadness in his eyes. My cousin was his nephew, whom he had watched grow up since childhood. He never expected him to become this kind of person. My cousin was the son of my second aunt. When Danny first started slashing bags in my store, out of kinship, my father didn't insist on compensation for me. Later, when it happened a second time, my father decided to go to my cousin's house to demand justice, but ultimately couldn't find anyone. That incident caused a conflict between my father and my second aunt. Today, our family was hosting a party, but my second aunt and her husband didn't even bother to come. The relatives who had good relations with my family had been silently observing until now. Initially, they sided with me, but after hearing me mention the figure of 2 or 3 million yuan, they started advising me to calm down. "Lynn, don't be angry anymore. Sit down and talk properly. We've heard about your store's situation. Now that all the relatives are here, just state the losses clearly, and everyone will help you figure out a solution." My cousin, impatient, pulled out his phone and grumbled, "How much money is it, really? This is wasting too much time. It's about time I replaced my phone anyway. How about this? I'll give you this as compensation. It's an old iPhone, but still worth a few thousand yuan, enough to cover your losses. I shook my head. Cousin, that amount of money really isn't enough. Besides, it's useless to me. That store has nothing to do with me anymore. My cousin, thinking I was complaining it was too little, scoffed. You're going too far. How much are your tattered bags worth anyway? All right, how about this? From now on, you can eat at my hot pot restaurant for free, okay? His wife, standing next to him, chuckled as if I was getting a great deal. Honey, you're so generous, but someone like Lin Chu probably only eats hot pot a few times a year. Why bother being so kind? If the damage had actually been to my store this time, I would have been so angry I could breathe fire. But now, seeing them so confidently boastful, I could only find it amusing. After winning the lottery, my cousin's family opened a hot pot restaurant, then invested in several snack shops. I'd heard they made a good amount of money each year, but certainly not hundreds of millions of yuan. Moreover, my cousin and his wife were inherently lazy and gluttonous. In recent years, they hadn't bothered to manage their businesses, only indulging themselves. Competition in the food industry was getting fiercer, and their business was no longer as prosperous as before. Not to mention, having experienced poverty, they spent money extremely lavishly once they had it, buying cars and houses, and his wife poured money into beauty treatments. Their pockets were not very deep now. Telling them to pay 2 or 3 million yuan immediately would surely be impossible. My cousin thought that simply giving me an old phone would resolve the matter. Just as he was about to turn and leave, the store employee arrived with the police, full of determination. The police stopped my cousin and his wife, presented their badges, and stated gravely, "We've received a report of significant property damage and need to investigate and resolve it right here." Seeing the police, my cousin and his wife were a bit startled, but they didn't fear me. My cousin immediately pulled me aside and angrily whispered, "It's such a small matter and you called the police? This is utterly disgraceful. You may not feel ashamed, but we do." I completely ignored them, looking instead at the new store owner and introducing my cousin and his wife to her. This owner was a friend of my wealthy roommate, so she was quite friendly with me. She stated frankly, in total, 6 bags were slashed, with a total value of over 3 million yuan. Let's just round it up to 3 million for compensation. With that, she took out each damaged bag and showed them to me. You can inspect these bags yourself. My cousin immediately pulled my father aside, his tone full of displeasure. Nephew, has Lin gone mad? Calling the police to scam money from our family? I know you don't have much education, but you can't let your daughter become this kind of person, can you? I was not in the mood to argue with them. Do whatever you want. His wife loudly wailed, "These bags are rubbish. Who knows if they're even genuine? I advise everyone to stay away from Lin Chu's family so you don't get scammed into buying fakes. Don't blame me if you lose face later." I pulled my father back, unable to hold back anymore. I retorted loudly, "Don't you dare slander me. I already said compensation has nothing to do with me. I sold this store a long time ago. The current owner is this person." The owner, hearing my cousin's wife accuse her bags of being fake, angrily said, "Are you saying my store's bags are fake? The police are here. I even brought the certificates of authenticity myself. If you don't believe me, check for yourselves." My cousin's wife had also bought luxury goods before, so she now pretended to be nonchalant, opening a bag to inspect it. But after a closer look, her face immediately turned awkward. She secretly pulled my cousin aside and whispered, "Honey, these bags, they seem to be genuine. Plus, the owner's clothes are all designer too. Could it be that our son really caused a huge mess this time?" At this point, the police also stepped forward and confirmed, "This store indeed belongs to Ms. Gu. Your son damaged someone's property. Compensation needs to be negotiated. We can only mediate. The specific resolution still needs to be agreed upon by both parties." Hearing this, my cousin and his wife immediately exchanged glances. Both understood, not mentioning compensation anymore. Instead, they stubbornly puffed out their chests and said, "Compensation? What compensation? This is the first time we've seen these bags. Who knows how they got damaged? My son is very well behaved. It couldn't have been him." Then they turned to me, glaring, "Is this store truly not yours anymore?" Seeing me nod in confirmation, they now reluctantly accepted the fact that I had sold the store. But instead of being ashamed, they seemed furious that I hadn't informed them beforehand, even scolding me harshly. The store owner, not wanting to get involved in my complicated family matters, simply frowned at my cousin and his wife and directly asked, "So, you're saying you don't intend to compensate?" My cousin's wife immediately adopted a tough stance, aggressively saying, "Listen, girl, people need to have a conscience. You say my son damaged them, so it must be him. Well, I could also say you're a murderer and arsonist." I stepped forward, scoffing at my cousin and his wife. "Look what you two are saying. At first, weren't you bold enough to say it was fine if your son slashed bags and you just pay for it casually? Just now, weren't you looking down on us, calling us poor and clinging to a few tattered bags? But now that the store owner is here, why are you suddenly refusing to admit it? Or is it that you actually don't have the money to compensate? What nonsense are you talking?" My cousin, enraged, immediately grabbed my shirt and raised his hand to hit me. Startled, I quickly dodged aside. The police, along with my parents, quickly stepped forward to restrain him. The relatives, who had long disliked my cousin and his wife's arrogant attitude, now looked gleeful seeing them truly in trouble. We all heard it. At first, we thought the store belonged to Lin Chu's family, and you admitted your son slashed the bags, even saying an old phone would be enough compensation. Why are you denying it now? Exactly. Always bragging about being rich, turns out it's all just a show. The whole hall got to see a great play today. My cousin and his wife's faces immediately darkened. They angrily waved their hands, trying to shoo the relatives away. But the relatives not only didn't leave, but stood in front of the police and the store owner, resolutely stating that my cousin and his wife could not be let off the hook, and were willing to testify that their son had admitted to slashing the bags with his own mouth. The store owner had already been annoyed by my cousin and his wife's earlier condescension, but now, seeing the relatives so enthusiastically helping her, she felt a little awkward. She smiled and said, "Thank you all for coming forward as witnesses, I truly appreciate it. But no need to worry, my store has CCTV. Even if they want to deny it, they can't escape." No matter how my cousin and his wife tried to quibble, when the store owner presented the surveillance footage, they knew it was useless to argue. Immediately, my cousin changed his attitude, his face full of smiles, trying to curry favor with the owner. "Boss, the child is small, he probably didn't mean it. Please be generous. You're a wealthy person anyway, don't quibble with a child." His wife also hastily chimed in, Yes, look how cute my son is. He's usually very well behaved." This time, it was probably just a bit of mischief. With that, they pulled Danny in front of the owner, intending to make him apologize to appease the situation. But the boy, accustomed to being pampered, would never apologize. He angrily turned his face away, even defiantly spitting directly at the owner. "Who do you think you are to make me apologize? My parents said whatever I do is right, I won't apologize." The owner looked at the ill-mannered child in front of her, clearly displeased. "Enough. Looking at your son, he's hardly well behaved. Not an ounce of remorse." My cousin and his wife panicked, immediately scolding Danny. "What are you doing? I told you to apologize, but you won't listen. If you don't apologize, don't blame us for punishing you." The boy, who had never been scolded or hit before, immediately burst into loud sobs. Crying, he wailed, "You're all bad people." He even turned to scold his own parents. My cousin and his wife's faces turned ashen when their son wouldn't cooperate. The owner, annoyed by the crying, impatiently waved her hand and said, all right, don't force him anymore. I don't need his apology. I know this isn't the first time he's damaged handbags. Before, because the previous owner was your relative, you deliberately took advantage of that to cover things up, refusing to teach your son right from wrong. Now he's getting more and more out of control. This is the consequence of your parenting." My cousin and his wife's faces turned purple with anger, but they didn't dare to retort. They could only force a smile, continuously apologizing to the owner. "Don't say anything more. You should compensate whatever amount is due, and compensate in full." The owner, not wanting to waste more time arguing with them, said coldly, then bluntly pulled out a list of damages and handed it to my cousin and his wife. The moment they saw the number on the paper, my cousin and his wife's faces froze. It truly was over 3 million yuan. My cousin tried to negotiate. "Boss, our family is only of average means. It's really hard to come up with that much money right now. How about you give us a discount? Can we compensate a few 100,000 yuan?" His wife immediately played the role of the aggrieved party, tears welling up in her eyes. She even knelt on the spot to beg the owner. The owner was startled by this unexpected action. Although she wasn't short of money and had heard about my cousin and his wife's financial situation, she never expected them to be so despicable over a few million yuan. For a long moment, she didn't know how to react. I immediately stepped forward, shielding the owner, and said coldly, "Cousin and his wife, didn't you always look down on us for being poor before? Now you're claiming your family has no money. If you do something wrong, you have to take responsibility. If you refuse to compensate, don't blame the owner for suing you. By then, the compensation amount will likely be even higher. The owner quickly chimed in. That's right. If you refuse to pay, then I have nothing more to say. Next time, my lawyer will contact you directly. Hearing about a lawsuit, my cousin and his wife finally realized that this time, it wouldn't be easy to cover things up. Just thinking about such a large compensation sum gave them a headache. My cousin, enraged, took his anger out on his son, giving him a hard slap and shouting, "You little brute, wasn't wreaking havoc at home enough? You had to run to someone else's store and make trouble too." His wife, seeing her son being hit, immediately rushed over to embrace him, reproaching her husband. "He's just a child. You should talk to him nicely. Why hit him?" Danny, who had never been hit or yelled at since he was little, couldn't take it anymore. He pushed his mother away, crying hysterically, "I'm not wrong. My parents said it's okay to slash bags at Auntie's store, so why are you turning on me now? Parents are liars. You're all bad people." With that, he threw a tantrum, furiously punching and kicking his parents, crying until he could barely breathe. His wife endured several kicks from her son, only crying, but my cousin couldn't take it anymore. Losing his temper, he directly kicked Danny. This time, the boy finally stopped crying, clutching his stomach, his face full of fear, not daring to say anything else. Everyone present watched this family drama with a mix of amusement and schadenfreude. I almost burst out laughing. "Cousin, look at you, already resorting to domestic violence. Before, when your son did wrong, you didn't teach him anything, but now you're hitting him right in front of everyone, truly making a spectacle for the world." I knew that at this moment, my cousin surely hated me and wanted to kick me, but seeing him grit his teeth, I felt incredibly satisfied. However, he still managed to hold back, maintaining a conciliatory attitude as he discussed the compensation amount and payment deadline with the owner. After reaching an agreement, the owner and the police left, but my cousin and his wife didn't. Instead, they put on fake smiles, their faces full of ingratiation, and turned to my father. "Uncle, today's matter has escalated too much. We have to pay such a huge sum. Uncle, do you think you could lend us 1 million yuan?" My father hadn't even reacted yet, still unable to believe that after arguing almost to the point of a physical fight, my cousin could now shamelessly ask to borrow money. Seeing my father say nothing, my cousin immediately turned to me, his tone pleading. "Lin, you know the business situation of my hot pot restaurant. Costs are high, and all the money earned is used to maintain operations. We truly can't come up with that much money at once. Considering we grew up together, please help your relatives out. Lend me some money to get through this difficult period." His wife also played the role of a pitiful victim, her voice carrying a hint of entreaty. "Yes, Lin, we're family. Why hold a grudge for so long? We still have to interact with each other in the future." I didn't bother to reply, nor did I feel any pity for them. They tried to ask other relatives for loans, but everyone silently understood, and no one opened their mouths. It was then that my cousin and his wife gradually realized that over the years, they had offended all their relatives. I unexpectedly spoke up. "My family can help you borrow a little, but not 1 million yuan, only about 300,000 yuan. But I want to see your attitude of admitting your mistakes first. First, transfer me the compensation for the few bags your son slashed in my old store. It's not much, just about 10,000 yuan. My cousin and his wife hesitated for a moment, but eventually transferred the money to me. The moment I received the money, I burst out laughing. "Cousin and his wife, I tricked you. My family doesn't have 300,000 yuan to lend you. Go find someone else to help you." Their faces twisted in an instant, but they managed to restrain themselves from exploding. Knowing for sure they couldn't borrow money, they had no choice but to leave. The owner gave them a week to pay the compensation. They were probably scrambling to find a way to manage it. Later, I heard that my cousin returned home and took his parents everywhere to find relatives to borrow money, but no one would help them. My father only sighed and shook his head. One cannot be like that. Now that they've come to this, they only have themselves to blame. I remembered that my family and my cousin's family used to be very harmonious, but ever since they became rich, they gradually looked down on all their relatives. Even when our maternal grandfather passed away, they were too busy traveling to bother returning for the funeral. Now, facing difficulties, did they think a few sweet words or some gifts could erase past mistakes? Ultimately, my cousin and his wife had to sell their house to gather enough money for compensation. No one would lend them money. They were so angry that they declared they would disown all their relatives. Even though they lost their home, they still had their hot pot restaurant. They even introduced a new rule. If any relative from my extended family came to eat, they would be charged double the price. When I heard this, I was speechless. As if their hot pot restaurant was the only one in the city. So arrogant. Who would even bother to eat there? After losing their stable financial resources, my cousin and his wife suddenly became diligent, personally immersing themselves in managing the hot pot restaurant. They fired the entire management team, operating everything themselves to save costs. They replaced all ingredients with substandard ones. Initially, due to drastic cost-cutting, profits increased slightly, which made them incredibly smug. But then, a customer suffered food poisoning after eating there. The incident was investigated and reported in the news. The entire affair, along with a list of the dreadful ingredients they had used, was exposed. After this spread, everyone knew their restaurant had problems. Soon, customers began to dwindle. Coupled with chaotic management, employees constantly quit in dissatisfaction. Before long, their hot pot restaurant had to close down. The small shops my cousin had invested in fared no better, gradually losing all their income. With no skills in hand and no other trades they knew, they eventually fell even further than the hardworking relatives who worked for others. Later, I heard they had to return to their hometown to do difficult manual labor to sustain their lives. Occasionally, some relatives would encounter their son, Danny, and everyone was surprised. The mischievous, unruly boy he once was had completely transformed. He no longer loudly yelled and fussed, but had become timid and shy, looking like a child who constantly lived in fear.